how on earth? So you think he's wrong and he thinks you're wrong. Samadarshina. So therefore, what the Gita says is, ignorance causes differences. It is ignorance, our ignorance, that people are helplessly functioning according to their nature. When you understand this, then you see a unity. It is the senses that see diversity. It is your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin that sees everything as separate. Knowledge reveals unity. When once you have this knowledge, oh, what an exalted state that is, that you can see everyone the same. See, all of us have the same common denominator, and that denominator is everyone is the same, is good. But you just have certain qualities, not even bad qualities, certain qualities. When you don't get affected by it, you get highly amused when you see an angry person. This is the secret of your enjoying a movie in which you see anger, you see blood and gore and horror and all that. How is it that you enjoy it in a movie? Because you're objective with reference to it. In real life, you're not objective, therefore you get affected. So what he's saying is, in real life, you should be objective exactly as you are with reference to a movie. So what he's saying is, the Panditaha, he also sees differences. When you say Samadarshina, it's not as if he sees you and the table as one, no difference between the two. He also sees differences, but he understands uniformity. Whereas we impose uniformity. We want everybody else to be like us. If you like coffee, you want your wife also to like coffee. If you like a particular movie, you want the whole world to like that movie. You demand uniformity from people. You impose uniformity and then create differences. Let's take the example of when a child goes to school and comes back dirty. The mother sees the son, she's happy. The maid sees the dirt and she's unhappy. So where are you? Are you the mother or the maid? If you are the mother, you see oneness, you see goodness, and you are happy, irrespective of what the qualities are. If you are like the maid, then you see the qualities, you get affected, the dirt of vasanas you see. And your life is all only that then, dirt. So therefore, develop a unifying vision. Now when we say develop a unifying vision, you get into a problem because you say, how can I? Then you act on that. So then you say, how do I, for instance, deal with a terrorist, a murderer, the same way that I deal with my child or a good person? He's not saying that. He is saying, view all equally. Sama darshinaha, not sama action. Conduct is not the same. Your view, your attitude towards all is equal, but your conduct with them depends on their nature. For instance, example has to be taken, otherwise you don't understand it. People who love animals, they love a kitten or a pet dog in the house as much as they love lions or tigers or anacondas and cobras. Their love for all animals is equal. But their conduct, behavior with the animals is very different. Has to be different. They'll pick up the kitten or the pup and fondle it. But you can't do that with a lion or tiger. In the recent Reader's Digest, there's an article about a man who goes to the Arctic region and decides that the bears, the grizzly bears or whatever they're called, are not ferocious. So he wants to prove it to other people, and you know what he does? He goes and hugs them and lives with them almost. You know what happened to him? He was mauled to death by the bear. However much you love bears, however much you may work to prevent their extinction, like tigers for instance. Today's paper, wasn't it? It says in Ranthambore 5 tigers were killed. So if you are a tiger lover, you may go well out of your ways, you stake your life, risk your life to protect the tiger. But at no stage can you go and interact with the tiger like the way you do a pet dog or a cat. Similarly, in your interactions with people, you must understand there are people of distinct, in fact, there are various kinds of species among human beings. There are people who are like kittens and cows, mild, meek, very malleable. There are vicious human beings who are like the cobra and the anaconda. If you go anywhere near them, sting you with poison. So there is no reason to love a meek and mild person anymore and to hate a vicious person. But in your conduct, just as an animal lover, even when he wants to protect a tiger, suppose a tiger has something embedded in its flesh and he wants to remove it, what will he do? He'll first anesthetize the tiger, then cure the tiger, and then release it in the wild before he wakes up. So next time, if you happen to have a tiger-like species, a member of your family, in other words, if your mother-in-law happens to be like that, don't go around anesthetizing her, please. You have to change your conduct according to the nature of the person, but your attitude towards all of them must be the same. This is an outstanding message, very, very practical. From this moment onwards, you can put it into practice. In fact, when Swami Vivekananda, he went to, I think it was the Maharaja of Khetri, to his palace, in his court, and he was sitting there. In those days, the kings used to have entertainment. So a young lady came and she was about to start a dance performance when he got up and said, I am a sannyasi and I am not supposed to, I can't watch this. So as he was walking away, the lady, who was extremely spiritual, sang a song, sang a bhajan, a Surdas bhajan, which said, Prabhu more avaguna chittana
Prabhu more avaguna chittana dharo Prabhu more avaguna chittana dharo समदर्शी प्रभु नाम तिहारो समदर्शी प्रभु नाम तिहारो चाहे तो पार करो प्रभु मोरे अवगुण चितना धरो
Prabhu more avaguna chittana dharo, samadarsi hai naam tumharo. Meaning, it's Surdas' bhajan, but she's still appealing to Swami Vivekananda that don't go by my avagun, don't go by my faults. Samadarsi hai, you're supposed to be samadarshi towards everybody. And Swami Vivekananda realized his fault. This is the greatness of people like that. He realized where he went wrong, immediately came back, begged her forgiveness, and sat through the whole performance. So every one of us must try and inculcate this samadarsi. Christ said a similar thing. Judge not others, resist not evil. So what it means is fight the evil inside. There is no evil outside. So when you sit there and say, oh, my boss is wrong and my wife is wrong and my parents are wrong, there is no wrong out there. All the wrong is within. The day you understand that day you're spiritual. Verse 19. Ihaiva tairjita sargaha yesham samye sthitam manaha nirdosham hi samam brahma tasmat brahmani te sthitaha. So, in this verse he's talking about how you conquer birth with reference to the future. They conquer birth even here. Everywhere, throughout the Gita, he speaks of iha. Iha means here, as you are, where you are, you can implement the principles of the Gita and rise to a level where you are unaffected by the world. You must feel inspired to get there. Only then will you make an effort to get there. Who conquers birth even here? Whose mind is established in equality. Again he drives it home. Yesham samye sthitam manaha. Then he says, Brahman is nirdosham, flawless. Nirdosham means free of impurity, free of vasanas. And the same, samam. Therefore, hence, they rest in Brahman. So, what he's saying here is, first of all, you conquer birth. How do you conquer birth? You conquer birth by getting rid of your vasanas. See, what happens is, you move from experience to experience. The fuel that drives you, this movement, is vasanas, desires. Why have we all come here? All of us have, each one of us has a desire to know the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, you may say, I don't have a desire to study the Bhagavad Gita. I came because my brother-in-law told me. Then you came to satisfy him. Whatever it is, a desire has brought you here. At 8 o'clock, we'll all disperse. Where will you go? Wherever the next desire takes you. Some of us will go home. Some will go to a restaurant to eat dinner. I don't know where else you'll go. So moment to moment, from birth to death, we are driven by desire. Desire is what propels you to activity. At death, first of all, why do we die? We die because our desires have changed so much, or the overpowering desire is such that the present embodiment, your body, and the external environment is no longer conducive for the fulfillment of your vasanas. So therefore nature gives you a chance to start afresh. This is called death of the present body and birth of the next body. Now here he is speaking of a person who has eradicated all his vasanas. When you eradicate all your vasanas, what happens? There is no longer any fuel. So when there is no fuel, what happens? There is no birth. You merge with the state of Brahman. So this state of samam is very difficult to understand, but what you need to understand is how is it that you see differences. All of us see differences. You don't see oneness. You don't see Brahman. How has this happened? Let's take an example. When you pass a ray of light through a prism, this ray of white light gets refracted into 7 colors. Right? We all studied this in school. Now, when you look at it from here, you see diversity, you see plurality. But when you look at it from here, there is one ray of light. Similarly, in the world, there is only one Brahman. But you and I are seeing this Brahman through the prism of the body, the mind and the intellect. It is the body, mind and intellect that refract that one Brahman into thousands and millions of things. And we are looking at the whole thing from this side. Therefore we see the diversity. So all that the Gita tells us is get rid of this prism which distorts everything. Then you'll get back to this samam. Now get rid of prism means, doesn't mean that you get rid of your body mind, doesn't mean tomorrow all of us commit suicide. No. What it means is the understanding, even while the body, mind and intellect are present, the capacity to transcend the limitations of the body, mind and intellect which we spoke of earlier. And then you understand the oneness. So it's like this. Suppose you stand before a mirror that is distorted, a mirror with flaws in it. What do you see there? You see a crooked nose. The moment you see a crooked nose in the mirror, do you immediately go to a plastic surgeon and say, please fix my nose? No. Why? Because you know that your original nose is perfect, at least not crooked like the way you see it in the mirror. And that the distortion that you see is a reflection of the distortion in the mirror, not in you. You understand this, therefore you don't get affected. But in life, you don't see that. You don't see that what you're seeing out there is a distortion created by your body, mind and intellect. It's in your vision, it's in your perception, it's not really out there. This understanding helps you to reach the state of samam. It's so true. It's not as if people want to be vicious. They are just functioning according to their nature. You happen to come in the way, unintelligently come in the way, and you get devastated. It's like you say, oh, I love the tiger, so I go and put my hand in the tiger's cage to pet him. The tiger decides to eat your hand instead of the food that is given to him. Whose fault is it? Yours. Similarly, even among people, people are just functioning according to their nature. You unnecessarily come in their way, they lash out at you. They don't mean to be vicious to you. When you understand that, you no longer get hurt. All the hurt, all the sensitivity in life comes when you don't understand this. You don't understand people behave according to their nature. Like a mother the other day was complaining, his teenage son doesn't talk to me. He doesn't care for me. He doesn't do that. It's not that the son doesn't care for you. It's just that he's got other preoccupations. Same way that you had when you were a teenager. We forget so easily and then get affected. So what he's saying here is, in fact, Brahman is present in equal measure in everyone. What comes in the way of your understanding this? Desire. Therefore, what to do? Function, practice the three principles of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And then you become Nirdosham. Verse 20. Na prahrishyet priyam prapya no dvijet prapya cha priyam sthira buddhiya sammudha brahmavedam hanisita. Resting in Brahman with steady intellect. Undiluted, the knower of Brahman does not rejoice with the pleasant nor grieve over the unpleasant. Now here he is talking about how you reach that state, what is your internal condition and what is the external condition. Internal condition is sthira buddhi, steady intellect. This is one thing that we don't have. Sthira buddhi means he is referring to not just the intellect, the mind as well. Your internal state is in such a chaotic condition. One moment you think this, another moment you think that, indecisive, you have no fixed destination. You're like a leaf in the breeze, whichever way the wind blows, you go. So everyone follows fads. When are you going to stand on your own feet and decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do? It requires strength. It requires enormous strength to choose a life pattern, a vocation, which is different from what the majority of the people are doing. Because the majority are in ignorance, so therefore they will go that way. If you are wise, you have to have the strength to go through it alone. Well, this is one of the primary conditions of spirituality. You can't expect to go with saha parivar, saha kutumba. With family and friends, it never happens. Because if you are invariably in a family, you'll find one person is interested. If the husband is interested, the wife is not interested, and vice versa. Now, if you want to do everything together, you'll never do anything. So, sthira buddhi, you must be clear. Clarity of thinking is very important. Which way are you going? What is your destination? What is it that you need to do to get to your destination? And then you get this inspiration. Every day you're eager, you're restless to act. If you don't have that, then you'll be... Today somebody sent me an email showing the difference between a person who's looking forward to Monday morning and a person who's looking forward to Friday evening. It's shown pictorially, through animals. It shows an animal that's jumping around and active and full of energy, dynamism. And the second is a bear who barely manages to push himself forward. So that's what it is. sthira buddhi. Then undeluded knower of Brahman. We are all in delusion. We don't know what is Brahman, what is truth, what is untruth, nothing we know. And an outstanding quality of this is he is not affected, he does not rejoice with priyam, that which is pleasant, nor does he grieve over apriyam, unpleasant. How to do that? How do you break free from priyam and apriyam? You have done it in your life. Again, get back to your life. A person who is terribly attached to good food, when he rises to the emotional level, let's say a young man is about to get married, all of us have got, at least those of you who are married, do you remember what you ate on your marriage day? You don't. Because at least the day when you are married, you are emotionally, you are happy at least on the day you get married. Afterwards, never mind. So when you are rejoicing, you don't remember it doesn't matter what you eat. Whether you ate or not also, it doesn't matter. Same with grief. Extreme grief, you rise above differences at the physical level. You're right. Then you move to the intellectual stage. A scientist who's so focused on, let's say, finding a cure for cancer or trying to figure out why a plane crashes or whatever it is, he'll be indifferent to both the pairs of opposites at the physical level and emotional level. Now he's speaking of a person who's risen still further to the spiritual level, and therefore the priyam and apriyam at all three levels do not make a difference to him. So therefore, how to be neutral to priyam and apriyam, grow to a higher. 21. Bahya sparsheshva saktatma Vindatyatmani yat sukham Sabrahma yoga yutatma Sukhamachayamashnude. One not attached to external contacts finds happiness in self. One united to Brahman by yoga obtains undecaying happiness. So what he's saying here is Bahya means external contact. There are three stages of life. First stage, when you are extroverted and you're looking, as he says, attached to external contacts, you're attached to the world, you're looking for happiness in the world, the result will be sorrow. You can't get over that. You can't help that. This is the law. The moment you turn introvert, this is what he's saying, not attached to external contacts, you will find happiness in the self. The third stage, when you are united to Brahman, when you reach the state of realization, you will experience undecaying happiness. Happiness that does not go down at all. Infinite bliss is what you will experience. So there are three types of joy. Vishayananda, the joy that comes with contact with the senses. Bhajanananda, the joy that comes from emotional and intellectual pursuit. And Brahmananda, the joy that comes from contact with Atman, Brahman. So this is all that he's saying here. We end for today